What is going on, Babylonians? It's me, Songs of Rage, back with another Outriders WorldSlayer video to bring to you, and today what we're going to be doing is a build theory for our current build, which is Critnomancer. Now, Critnomancer was designed with one thing in mind, and that was to be able to actually utilize the sniper weapons, which actually don't get much love in this game. Now, they do have really high base damage, they have really high crit multipliers, so what's not to love about that? Well, they are actually kind of on the difficult side to be able to use. They're very kind of cumbersome, especially after you take that one shot, because it does lock you from being able to look downwards due to some kind of weird kind of recoil mechanic. So it's kind of difficult to be able to aim, it's kind of difficult to actually be able to benefit from it, and the fact that enemies move so much, or in some cases we've got the beasts that actually charge forward straight away, which obviously getting a bit too close to your own personal space, you aren't actually able to benefit too much from actually being able to utilize one of the sniper rifles in this game. So what we actually did was come up with the Critnomancer, which obviously I hope you've all seen the video already, which is probably the best sniper setup that's probably out there in this current game, which is trying to find the best way to be able to actually utilize them and the best way to actually maximize damage potential. So what we did was we used the Iceberg Sniper Rifle. Now, the Iceberg Sniper Rifle comes with the Winter Blast, which is the tier 3 mod, where critical shots create an icy blast inflicting freeze on enemies within a 5-meter radius, and this has a very short cooldown of 1 second. Now, what we wanted to be able to do with this is, because while sniper rifles are actually kind of difficult to be able to land those all-important critical shots, is to be able to make that much easier for ourselves. So what we did was we swapped out the tier 2 mod to be able to put Embalmer's Rage. Now, Embalmer's Rage doesn't get much love, because why would you ever want something that you can actually inflict critical hits by yourself when you can actually have something that just increases your weapon damage as normal, and then obviously when you do hit that critical shot, you're able to actually get the benefit of the weapon damage on top of the critical shots. Now, the only problem we've got with that is that because sniper rifles have a very low rate of fire, it's very unforgiving if you actually do miss that shot, and obviously so much in our build actually requires us to be able to hit that critical shot. So while the Iceberg is actually a really good one to be able to, because it is able to freeze, which makes a follow-up shot so much easier, what we actually did was put Embalmer's Rage on here to be able to make it so that if we do have to be able to panic shoot, to be able to actually deal with a close range enemy or at any point, we can actually just always go for a body shot to be able to inflict that critical shot that obviously we've actually been affected by with Embalmer's Rage, and that triggers everything that's currently on the build. So that means we actually able to, with body shots, able to trigger Winter's Blast, which then makes hitting that follow-up critical shot even easier from there. And then obviously because we've done that, it allows us to be able to chain critical shots from enemy to enemy, and just makes our life so much easier. Now, in terms of what we're actually being able to run with our skills, we are using Blighted Turret, which obviously is primarily used for the capstone of the top tree, which is Pestilence, to be able to give ourselves extra increased damage on top of what we already do. And we also have it with Ice Component in this build, which we'll get into in a second, but obviously that allows us to be able to freeze enemies, which makes it a little bit easier for us to be able to get that first shot as well. We do have Blighted Rounds to be able to maximize the damage potential, because this is a firepower build after all. And we do also have Fixing Wave. Now, Fixing Wave is there to be able to increase our weapon damage even higher, and we'll get into that in a second, because that actually does come with the gear, but it's also a very nice way to be able to trigger, to be able to get ourselves to be able to back up to full, because the only downside to this is while the intrinsic healing ability for the Technomancer is a very good one, and obviously allows us to be able to keep topped up if we consistently land like rapid shots, unfortunately because the sniper rifles have a very low rate of fire, that does mean that we actually start getting a bit low down on health sometimes, and we aren't actually able to keep ourselves topped up in some situations. So Fixing Wave is a very good way to be able to keep ourselves healthy, to be able to keep ourselves alive, and then obviously on top of that it also gives us a very nice damage boost on top of it. So if we go into the perk tree, which we'll cover just before we actually look into the proper gear, we actually have gone for primarily top tree, and this allows us to be able to pick up as many like sniper weapon damage buffs as well as standard like generic kind of weapon damage buffs, as well as obviously toxic and freeze buffs. We have also managed to get an additional point into our cooldown reduction for our Fixing Wave, which just allows it to come back a little bit quicker, because that obviously allows us to be able to get additional more like damage on top of what we already do. So looking into the actual gear set, now we weren't using cryo turrets, and we weren't using ice snap, so therefore the helmet and the chest piece for the Borealis set didn't make too much sense to be able to use. So what you actually want to look out for are 2 purples, which obviously come with bonus firepower, long range damage, and cooldown reduction. This allows us to be able to have our skills back up as quickly as possible. This also plays into the strengths of the Technomancer, which obviously is long range damage. And having that bonus firepower means that we're actually able to deal consistently high damage with our sniper rifle, which already has consistently high damage. In terms of the mods, what we actually have gone for is Fixer-Upper to be able to amend our Fixing Wave to be able to give us health regen, and allows us to be able to consistently, after the skill has already gone into cooldown, be able to keep ourselves a little bit more healthy with additional health regen on top of that. We have also gone for Crit Stack to be able to mean that every single time we hit a critical shot, we start getting stacks to be able to increase our firepower and our anomaly power. And the reason why this is so useful is because obviously with Embalmer's Rage, as soon as we've got a kill, every single shot that's after that will be a critical shot, which means that we're going to get consistently stacking up those additional firepowers. On top of that, we've also gone for Euthanizer, which also comes where it allows us to be able to grab Shatter and allows us to be able to grab Freezing Boost to be able to get maximum kind of like damage modifiers out of that. We've gone for Damage Absorber to be able to give ourselves a little bit more of an armor boost and resistance just in case we actually do run into a little bit of trouble. And we've gone for Sharp Eye, which killing enemies while aiming down our sights, because this is a sniper rifle, we will always be looking down our sights, means that we can stack our firepower even higher. And then with Ice Component, we're able to turn our Blighted Turret into a Freezing Turret, and Trick Up the Sleeve allows us to be able to consistently refill our magazine to be able to make sure that we don't run out of Blighted rounds. Now, the reason why we've gone for Trick Up the Sleeve instead of something like Toxic Lead is because the sniper rifle is able to consistently kill enemies in one single shot. Now, the problem with Toxic Lead is that it does require one shot to be able to set up the toxic status in the first place, and then obviously get the kill that like follow up with a different shot. Now, because we are killing in one shot, the toxic doesn't apply before we actually able to get the kill, which means that we actually don't, like, we never meet the conditions when it comes to that mod unless we're looking at elite. So Trick Up the Sleeve doesn't matter if you actually kill them in 1 or 5 or 10 shots or anything like that. You're able to consistently refill your magazine as long as you get a kill with Blighted rounds. The last mode that we are actually gone for is the Cycle. Now, when this is paired with Fixer-Upper and Fixing Wave, this does mean that we get a plus 50% weapon damage bonus to be able to actually boost our sniper rifle damage even higher, which allows us to be able to hit those 5 million crits. Now, this is where we have the fun part, because this allows us to be able to get into the new stuff. So what we're actually going to do is look into the Ascension Tree first, and obviously because this is a firepower build, because this is a very like a heavy hitter build, we actually do want to go for weapon damage first. Now, weapon damage will be the main one to be able to grab, because this affects weapon damage at all ranges, so whether they get a bit too close or whether they're actually still at the efficient distance, which is obviously our long range modifier. That means we're actually able to consistently still get that damage boost, so I'd recommend getting 10 points into there first, and then going into 10 points into long range damage. From there, you can actually just go branch out into other things, so you can actually grab things like cooldown reduction to be able to get your Fixer-Upper and your turret back a little bit quicker, and you can actually grab a little bit of more health and armor to be able to help you out, or you could always go for close range damage to be able to increase that amount of damage, just in case enemies get up to a little bit too close to yourself. If we go from there into the Pax Tree, now the Pax Tree is where you kind of have to be able to decide which one you want to go for. Now, there's some really good options when it comes to the Pax Tree, and there's one that I'm really interested in being able to try out. So obviously we can go the standard route, which is obviously the top tree, which goes initial strikes, and then going from there into Brain Dead to be able to activate when we activate one of our skills, like our Blighted Turret or our Fixing Wave, which increases our weapon damage by 15%, and then we can also go into Painkiller to be able to give ourselves additional health regen. Now, as an additional note on this, because we're actually grabbing this, we don't actually need Fixing Wave or Fixer-Upper anymore, because when we actually use Painkiller, we're going to be getting 5% health regen, which is as standard as what that mod actually already offers to us. So we actually already get the 50% just from getting one single stack of actually shooting enemies, which is what we do in the first place. So therefore, we actually don't need Fixing Wave anymore. We can actually, this one single mod right here, this one single point will allow us to be able to run a different skill altogether. Now, what this could mean is that we potentially could swap out one of the pieces for maybe like a chest piece, and that allows us to be able to use something like Cold Snap, or maybe we could always go down the cryo turret route, and actually that would allow us to be able to have things already frozen for us, or kind of like something like a couple of AI controlled turrets that actually help us out and keep some enemies off us for a little while we actually deal with some of the main targets. So this allows us to be able to have a little bit more of a build variety, and I'm really interested in what that actually happens. So what this means is we can actually go for one of two paths here. So we could always go for the top tree again, which means that we're grabbing permanence, and then we're grabbing dissection, because obviously we will be inflicting toxic with every single shot, but I don't think we'll actually see the maximum amount of benefit when it comes to that. And the reason why I think that is because When it comes to the Critnomancer, in the majority of cases you were killing anywhere between 1 to 2 bullets, depending on obviously the elite. So therefore you're not actually getting the full benefit on obviously being able to apply like so many additional statuses to actually then ramp up your damage for dissection to actually benefit and get quite a bit of damage kind of like sent off in the end. So what I would possibly say is actually going for the middle tree, which allows us to be able to go for echoes. So it allows us to be able to do something like being able to, on a 70% chance, because this is a sniper weapon, we are able to then deal additional 50% of our damage on top of what our initial shot. Now this means that we can actually kind of get some more consistent one-shot kills on our elites, and it's going to be a really nice way to be able to deal with any kind of like bosses in the end. This means that we could potentially actually use this build to be able to take down Yagak as a firepower Technomancer. So we can actually use sniper rifles to actually get that kind of effect going. The addition of the previous node before that, which is Necrotic Tissue, allows us to be able to get increased damage to elite enemies by 20% when we use a sniper weapon as well, which means that we're actually going to see our single target damage increase exponentially just purely by going for these two. So I do think this is going to give us the best damage boost initially so far, and this will be the main one that I would actually be looking to be able to try out. So I think this will be the place that I actually do start out. I think this could potentially turn it into a really great bossing kind of build in the end, but obviously will it be enough to actually only have 8 shots in our current magazine? That's something that we're going to be able to have to tell. But the thing is, we are going to be getting some more mods, so are we going to actually see something that's going to benefit our build a little bit more when it comes to that, or are we going to actually see some things that are going to be able to hinder it? That's the only problem, but obviously this is all speculation when it comes to that side, because obviously we don't have any details around that. So with all this in mind, let's do the build theory side of things. So when it comes to the Critnomancer is already a strong build, but it does strong single target damage. Now when it kind of falls down is because it doesn't really deal any kind of like area of effect damage. So if we're actually dealing with a bunch of enemies at a time, granted you are able to freeze them all in place, but it does mean that it's kind of relatively slow because you have to take on one at a time. Bladed rounds as a general already does a little bit of area effect damage, but it's not exactly strong enough to be able to like wipe out hordes or anything like that. Similar in aspect to like what Bone Shrapnel is able to do when you actually use a primarily burst AR when it comes to like one of the meta builds. So it doesn't necessarily answer any of those problems, unfortunately, but what it does actually do is it kind of doubles down on the single target damage. Now what this makes me think is that we're actually going to see some really good sniper builds come out there to be able to deal intense and high damage when it comes to bossing. So the fact that we're able to deal 20% more damage to elites in the first place with Necrotic Tissue, and then we're able to get an Echo on top of that to be able to then obviously deal up to 50% more of our damage, well, we've just done on the shot before, it brings a little bit of a smile to my face thinking what damage potential we could actually see when it comes to actually using this build. But unfortunately, well, as it currently stands, obviously we can kind of speculate, but it's essentially what I'm trying to say is that this is going to be really good for single target damage. But if this is the expedition, or this is the kind of end game that we're expecting, where we're going to actually see kind of more along a horde mode, which is obviously what the community was asking for, then this build isn't necessarily going to cut the cheese when it comes to that. Now this isn't me saying that obviously this build is unplayable, this isn't me saying that this is going to be terrible to actually be able to take into that in-game. I'm just saying that it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge compared to some of the other builds that we actually have covered so far, and obviously some of the other meta builds that are out there. So this is still viable. I would highly recommend that you still actually go and search for some of the mods, some of the pieces to be able to actually build this and try it out for yourself. But obviously I don't necessarily foresee this actually being one of the top builds to be able to speedrun any of the end-game content. Anyway, those are my two cents, my thoughts when it comes to the Critnomancer. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope you've well, if you have any kind of like comments that actually contradict anything I've said, or maybe you actually agree with me, let me know in the comment section down below. I'd be really interested to be able to hear from yourself. Thank you so much for making your way to the end of this video. It really does mean the world to us. Thank you so much to the Babylonian family, as always, for their continued support. It allows us to be able to do videos like this. And that just leaves me to say, keep yourselves safe, keep yourselves well, and I'll see you all on our next video.